Alright, welcome back to a new video, and of course, this was the continuation of the Fast and the Furious movie reviews, and we of course are at Fast 5, which is very fitting, because the last video was Fast 10, which is villain, and its location is basically based off of Fast 5. But anyways, if there's a word or a way I could describe Fast 5, it's like the Infinity War for Fast and the Furious. Because Infinity War was basically where it took all the characters that everyone loved from different movies and putting them all together. Like how all the movies led up to Avengers, the first team up movie being Captain America, Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, not Widow or Hawkeye, unfortunately, but whatever, who cares about them? And then they did the same thing, not for Age of Ultron, but for Infinity War with all the other characters joining in. This is the exact same thing for Fast 5, where at least one character from each movie before Fast 5, obviously, returns for the team up. Obviously, Brian, Dom, and Mia don't count because they appeared in Fast 4, so they already returned, so they don't count. But the characters or the representatives from each movie is Fast and the Furious 1 is Vince. That's right, Vince is back in this movie. You don't know him, he was basically the best friend to Dom before Brian, right? How Dom considers him his brother, if anything. Too Fast and Furious has two. It has Tej, which is very surprising, even though he's beloved, and I love him too in the future installments of the Fast and Furious franchise. Tej never really played a humongous role in Too Fast and Furious to, count him getting his ticket stamped for this movie. But he is famous, ludicrous, so that's probably why. And, of course, Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious 3, is Han. Unfortunately, not Sean, but this time I'm not mad because it makes sense. Tokyo Drift takes place after the events of Fast 5, so there'll be no point for Sean to be there. And Fast and Furious 4 is actually Giselle, the right-hand woman, I guess, to Brago or whatever the big bad's name was. She's back, and they team up. And of course, Fast 5 introduces some new character, being Elena Nieve, or Neves, or however you pronounce her name. And of course, the fan favorite, Luke Hobbs, played by The Rock. And let me tell you something, Luke Hobbs in this movie is really good, man. Luke Hobbs is basically the guy, right? Because you had before the mafia bosses or whatever, big bads of the previous movies. No, this dude, instead of letting other people do his dirty work, he goes there and does it himself, right? But one complaint before we really get into the movie is that his tough guy, invulnerable persona gets taken out, like, really quickly. Like, it doesn't even last in his first fight. Like, he never gets in a fight, but the first fight he gets in, he gets absolutely whipped. So, whatever, right? And this movie is, cut up into three chunks, I like to say. The first third being introducing, the main characters, the main villain, and the main secondary antagonist, because Luke Hobbs obviously isn't a villain because he's like the military guy, but he does play a role against the crew. And in the first third, it gives us the reason of why they're doing this. It sets up the heist, right? In the second third, right, is actually the setting up of the heist. They start preparing and all that stuff. And it's other people preparing too, being the main bad guy and Hobbs, right? All three of them are preparing for what's to come. The third half is, of course, the heist, right? So anyways, let's get in the first third, and that, of course, where we get to see what happened to Brian O'Connor, Dom, Dominic Toretto, and Mia Toretto after the events of Fast and Furious 4. Because if you didn't know from that movie, it's shown that they're going to break Dom out of prison. But it does show it here. And you know how I keep saying, the ridiculous stuff happens before in these movies? Yeah, Fast and Furious has the same thing. And I'm not talking about the vault scene in the end of the movie or near the end of the movie. It's this one, where they break out Dom by basically Brian in Dom's basic muscle car, right? Trips the bus. Yep, he stops and the bus hits him. The car does not move at all, but the bus just flips and flips and flips, and they basically kidnap Dom. Not really kidnap, he wants it, right? and they're on the run and they're broke, right? They got no more money. So they end up in Brazil, where we get to meet up with the first returning character, that being Vince. He, after the events of Fast and the Furious 1, it didn't really go too well for my boy Vince. But he ended up in Brazil, never falling too far down, and ended up getting married and having a kid. That's right, the first kid of the franchise is Vince. And later on in the movie, basically damn near the end of the movie, we do figure out that the kid's name is Nico, which is short for Dominic. I don't know where the O came from, but whatever, man. That's right, Vince named his son after Dominic Toretto. But we do get to see our first driving scene, right? Because in Fast and the Furious 5, there's not racing scenes. There is one race scene, which is really good, but before we get there, there's none. But there's mostly driving scenes, which is heists, right? Because Fast 5 is basically a stepping stone towards, from the old days of the heists and the mafia bosses into the new era of technology, mercenaries, and the elite, right? But they're tasked to take some very expensive cars and bring it to a certain location. But right off the bat, we get introduced to the big bad, being Reyes. Of course, if you watch Fast 10, that is the main bad guy's dad, right? But it's Reyes' guys who are tasked to do this. And Dom and Brian realize, oh wait, these people might not be that good, and they are right. They try to steal a specific car. That's right, a specific car, not any car, just a specific car. While Vince, Brian, and Dom and Mia were all like, we're just gonna steal whatever cars, right? That's what we're asked. Nope, they have to steal a specific car. So you know what they do? Brian and Dom steal it first. They're like, nah, we know where they're going. And the whole thing happens, like boom, 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 and it starts driving. But, first of all, let me tell you something. The Mad Max type of truck that they drive in Fast 5 looks amazing, bro. It looks cool. It reminds me, for some reason, of Real Steel. Don't really see the correlation, but it works, I guess. And the second most ridiculous scene happens, although it's not that ridiculous because it keeps happening in action movies, so, I guess it doesn't count, is, of course, where Dom and Brian manage to escape with the cars and drive off, not a bridge, but they drive off into a body of water, which for most people, after realizing that you can't fall from space and land in water and be okay, you realize at a certain point, falling in the water is basically like falling into concrete. So, boom, right? But in the train heist, 3 American agents get killed on the train, which then in turn gets Luke Hobbs called, being like, yo man, some things just went down, some U.S. diplomats or whatever got killed here, right? And Luke Hobbs like, I bet. And damn, his entrance is cool. And he specifically asked for Elena because they're dealing in Brazil, which is, basically, as they say, run by Reyes. So if you got a cop on your side, you're most likely, asking to get killed because Reyes owns the cops, basically. So she specifically asked for Elena, which later in the movie we realized, okay, not really later in the movie, it's literally revealed that her husband was killed by Reyes, or at least Reyes' men. So, if you could buy someone like her, then you either have a bajillion dollars, or you have her whole family hostage. But she doesn't have a family, not anymore, so good, you can't buy her. But the specific thing in the car that they were looking for was a chip. They realized it was a chip because they're like, what's this? Oh, no. And they realized what was in the car was a chip because Vince was, kind of checking around the car. And Dom was like, what? You knew that they weren't just for the car, but, in Vince's defense, he just saw, hey, steal these cars, you get a butt ton of cash. And they'd be like, okay, let me do that. He didn't expect no chip. What he's supposed to do? He ain't Tej. You know what I'm saying? But the chip basically is like a laptop full of passwords. It basically says where Reyes' money is stored, where it's going to be transported, when it's going to be transported. Basically a blueprint of how to rob them. And they realize, hey, we're on the run, we're broke. I think if we rob them, we could be free. We don't have to worry about anything. We'll be so rich that we could live in space, right? So that sets up the rest of the movie for the heist. And then the second third is the calling of the team, right? They obviously call up the representatives, being Tej and Roman, Han, and the Puerto Ricans. I forgot about the Puerto Ricans or Dominicans. I forgot they were in the movie. Even though they're the funniest things in the movie, they're some of the best people. I forgot to say it because I thought they were introduced in Fast Five, but no, they appeared in Fast and the Furious 4 in the beginning. So technically, they don't return. I mean, their whole character is basically shown in Fast and the Furious 4. Basically, two people who argue and are for comic relief, but they get more depth. Not really that much in Fast Five. So that's why I thought they were in Fast Five, right? But they all get called for a specific task, being the demolition man, the talking man, the smart guy, and the disguising man, I guess. Han was basically just like, oh yeah, I'm calling Hanna because he could just appear in broad daylight, no one would care, which is sad, but whatever. And like I said, this is setting up for the last half of the movie, where Hobbs finds the GT and is like, all right, what's missing, right? And then obviously soon realize that the chip is missing and saying, oh, they're gonna rob someone, right? Or they have something really big in store. And Reyes is setting up because all he does is get all his money from all the warehouses into a single vault. And that happens because Dom, Brian, and basically the whole crew goes to rob one of the warehouses of Reyes's and take all his money. But they don't take it. They have to send a message to get all the money into a vault. Because like they said, yeah, we can rob them, but the second we rob one place, they're just going to hide all the money. And he's like, all right, so let's make them hide it all in one place. So they rob them, hold everyone, not hostage, but they basically tie up everyone. Be like, oh, and they show their faces. So basically showing, yeah, we ain't scared. It's like, oh, all this money, Reyes' money? Yeah, we don't give a damn about this. And they burn it. Yeah, that's right. They burn the money. Absolutely atrocious. And they're like, hey, tell your boss that we coming for him, bro. Tell him they better be more money, bro. He ain't ready. But now they're setting up because they realize that they put it all in a police station. That's right. They're like, oh, a police station? Yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, I think I'm good, bro. And but they do manage to convince them that, hey, it's still gonna work. Why? Because why? Because they start to get intel into the base. They figure out how the vault looks like, what type of vault it is, how to break in. They hack into the cameras to see, okay, how much of a window do we have before the camera spots us? How fast do we have to go till the camera just ignores us, basically? But before that, they of course need cars where they go to the racing area, right? The street racing of Brazil. Where we get introduced to this character. Although I don't think his name is specifically stated, he is actually, which I did not know, because he doesn't appear for that long. He does appear twice, in that being, I don't think I can get his name, but if I were to put it in words, he's basically the Tej of Brazil, because Tej was basically running the whole street racing community in Miami, while this guy does it in Brazil. And he does appear in Fast X, which is very nice. Bad thing, spoiler alert, he dies. Yeah, he dies in the movie. I didn't even know why, and they killed him off for some dumb character that didn't even matter. Like, they didn't need her to forward the plot. And you just killed off a returning character for no reason. Anyways, end of spoiler. So, they take his car. They win the car in a race. And they're like, okay. And then they're out here driving, making their warehouse or their little, I don't know, headquarters a place to practice, right? Because they got the same cameras, the same setup as the police station. To see, okay, let's see how fast we have to drive. And then they realize, oh, wait, we can't drive that fast because the cameras are too fast, The cameras pick up everything. I don't know, but after that, we do get the first encounter with Dominic Toretto and Luke Hobbs. Because soon they realize, oh, wait, Hobbs is after us and Reyes is basically after us. So we have to get one of them off our back. And that is, well, Hobbs was chosen because they're robbing Reyes. There's no reason to take him out, right? So they take him back to the street racing of Brazil, right? And, of course, one of the most iconic scenes of the franchise, they pull out, Hobbs' men pull out their guns, their high-tech weapons, lasers or whatever, right? Dom's all like, man, you must have forgot where you from, bro. And it's all like, we in Brazil right now. And then the entire street racing community take out their guns. Be like, yeah, man, get out of here, cop. And then, of course, that deters them because although they do have high-tech weapons, they're like 5. It's like 5 men. Like, I don't care how strong you are. If there's like 20 people shooting at you at close range, yeah, you're probably not going to survive that. And after they leave, they actually put a damn tracker on Hobbs. Does that serve any purpose? Yes, but actually not for the team. It serves for Hobbs later on in the movie. But after that, they go back to figure out, how do we get past these cameras? And they realize they can't. Like, it's impossible unless they use invisible cars, as Han says. And they're like, oh yeah, there actually is invisible cars, and that being cop cars. They rob 4 cop cars. Han, Roman, Brian, and Dom all steal police car. One of my most favorite scenes in the movie is the first and I think the only race scene ever of Fast Five, and that's they're all in their police cars, and Roman offers a million, or okay, not a million, 100,000 bet on a race to see who wins, like 2 stoplights, whatever, right? And Han's like, but let's quadruple it, bro. Let's make it 1 million, because after the heist, they would all have 11 million, right? And they all agree, and it's so fun watching them all race each other, because it's okay, even though it's a humongous bet. In the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. But they're all having fun driving, and of course, this is the one of the most important scenes, because this truly shows who is the best driver of the drivers. Because Tej doesn't drive. Giselle isn't really known for being a driver in the Fast and Furious 4. Mia is actually revealed in the movie pregnant, so yeah, I don't think she's gonna be driving like that. And of course, the Puerto Ricans or Dominicans, I'm just calling them both, also aren't known for driving. So of course, Han from Tokyo Drift, Roman from Too Fast and Furious, and Brian and Dom for Fast and Furious 1. The winner is of course Brian. That's right, Brian wins. And this is one of the most clear-cut victories, because they're all using the same car, same everything. The only difference is the driver. But for some reason, it doesn't even matter, because after the race, Roman's like, "Oh man, you didn't see it? Like what? Yeah, he let off the gas right at the end to let you in." Like, wait, why would he do that? Why would he do that? That makes no sense. But anyway, this is where it all goes down to absolute doo-doo, because after they have a barbecue and become closer as a family, which is really nice. I like it. Talk about what they want to do with the money and all that stuff. It's a really enjoyable scene, really heartfelt. Brings the family closer. But Hobbs reappears because he redirected the tracer that they put on his car and saw, okay, these people are tracking us, so they went to them. And like I said, Hobbs was just this big, strong guy that couldn't be stopped. He gets his ass whipped by Dom and almost gets killed by a socket wrench, I think. So, so much for Hobbs, right? But they get taken out. Him, Vince, or Dom, Vince, Brian, and Mia all get taken in a car. Which actually, Vince was absent for the most part of the movie because he was accused of being an idiot, basically putting them in this entire mess in the first place. Well, obviously before racing, before the Volt was figured out and all that stuff. But he re-entered as the other driver and gets the cut of the money, which means they're not making 11 million. They're making like 7 million at this point, but doesn't matter. They all get taken out, and they get ambushed by Reyes' second in command, and Hobbs' elite task force of men. They all get shredded. But then again, who could blame him? Reyes' men had RPGs, bro. RPGs. I hear pa 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 pa, blowing up cars and all that stuff, and it's really sad because Hobbs went to go try to save his men and watched them all die. But not to worry, Elena, who basically not really served that much of a purpose, did let Dom, and the crew escape, right? Not escape, but to get out of the car. And they took out Reyes' men because after Hobbs was taken out, the entire group of, guys ran up to try to kill Hobbs. And that, of course, made them sitting ducks because they just mowed them down, Dom, Vince, what I'm saying? Pa, 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 pa. And they were dead. Unfortunately, someone did die that was not important, but was important enough to, be sad. Vince ends up dying due to a gunshot wound, because let me tell you something in the movies. Unless you're the main character, this doesn't apply to you, right? No, if you're the main character, this doesn't apply to you. You either never get shot in, the action movies, or if you do get shot, you're basically dead. If it's anywhere not on your shoulder or legs, you're basically dead. And it sucks. Vince dies telling Dom about his kid and all that stuff, being like, yo, man, you need to visit him. And does he visit him in the end? Spoiler alert. Kind of. But whatever. Vince dies, and they're losing hope because they done tightened up the defense. The sneakiness of the plan is not going to work because they just got more security. And then after saving Hobbs and Elena, basically, Hobbs was like, nah, I'm joining you guys, right? Because, Reyes killed his men, and he said, no one does that and gets away with it, right? So they decided, instead of going sneaky, they just go loud, right? They go and smash in, steal the vault, and leave. Like, what are they gonna do? Shoot at them? They have armored tanks, right? So they do it, and then they start whipping the damn vault. You know, with the racing scene, with the Chargers and all that stuff. Start whipping the damn vault like a damn, well, obviously, wrecking ball. Pow, pow, pow. Destroying cop cars left and right, like boom, boom, boom. And of course, the bridge scene. Very cool scene, which is really weird seeing it because you're like, oh, that was Reyes's car, right? You know, the villain of the Fast X movie. I was over there like, yep, that's his car. Yeah, he was supposed to be in there, and he gets hit, bah, bah, bah. You know what I'm saying? And they end up succeeding. They start smashing the vault, and Hobbs kills Reyes. Like, literally, he does not give a damn about him. He walks to him, pow, pow, kills him, and he's dead. It's over. No more fights. Now, of course, Hobbs being like, I have to take you guys in, right? They're like, what, really? And they're like, yep, I'm sorry, bro. But because you helped take down the man, or let me kill the man who killed my men, I'll let you have a 24-hour head start. But the vault stays here. Difference is, Dom outsmarts, or the whole crew outsmarts Hobbs because Hobbs checks and realizes the vault is empty. That's because when they had the opportunity to breathe during the whole chase scene with the vault, they swapped it out. They drove it into a a garbage truck, and it got in a double, which makes sense because in the middle of the movie, they buy a replica of, well, not replica, right? It actually works, of the safe to realize, okay, how do we break in? How do we open it? Because once we steal it, it's basically going to be impossible to open. So we need to figure out how to open it. So they do that. They do just that. They replace it with an empty vault and start smashing that one around, right? And they drive off into the sunset, which makes sense and doesn't make sense because he says, oh, you only have 24 hours to go. But every single person in the crew has done stuff that would last more than a day. Because Roman and Tej both buy cars, which I would assume they're from Abu Dhabi. Because Roman said, like, oh, yeah, I bought this car. And the man from Abu Dhabi... And I gave the man from Abu Dhabi a offer he cannot refuse. And Tej, I would assume he did the same thing, or he went to a different country to buy the car, right? Because there's only 4 in the world. Brian and Mia, obviously Mia didn't have a baby bump, right? Or any bump. And now she looks, well, you know, it's pretty impossible to be like, oh, she's definitely not pregnant, right? No, she's definitely pregnant, right? And Dom ends up with Elena. Yeah, that's right. He ends up rizzing her up, if people would say, right? Han and Giselle become a thing. I mean, it was always hinted in the movie, but, you know, at this point it's confirmed. And they drive to Berlin, right? Enjoying life before heading to Tokyo. At least that's the plan. And Dom visits, you know, Brian. And the Puerto Ricans and Dominicans are, well, I'm going to just say Puerto Ricans at this point, right? End up gambling. Yeah, that's right. They put 10 million, which is actually, I would assume they would have 1 million left because of the whole thing. But then again, Vince also got a cut because Dom, before leaving Brazil, gives Vince's wife, or at this point, ex-wife, I'm sorry, Vince, and his son, his cut of the money, being like, all right, here's from Uncle Dommy. Or Uncle Dom gave his money. Not all of it, obviously, but like half at least. Which is really weird, because you put it in a house with no protection, no locks or nothing. Okay, it has locks, but not really strong ones, right? Not the master locks. And he just puts a pile of cash there, like, come on. But whatever. And anyways, the Puerto Ricans gamble, and one bets 10 million on red, and obviously they argue because that's their whole shtick. And the other one says, no, you're supposed to bet on black, right? You're not supposed to bet on red. And then they both put 10 million on each of the color. And I would assume they won, at least one of them won, which I don't know if that really counts as a win. But whatever. But like I said, everything that happened was more than 24 hours, which, I mean, it would make sense because after Hobbs let him go, he's like, oh, Dom, I'm going to see you soon. And Dom's like, nah, no, you ain't. So I guess he was right. They did not see each other soon. But anyways, that is the end of the Fast and Furious movie. It's one of the better movies. It's but I would get why people don't enjoy these type of movies, because weirdly enough, MatPat made a video talking about what's the better movie of the franchises, right? Which had the higher percentages, and he said the ones with the most cars and the most, you know, furious to its name usually ended up not being well received, even though Fast and Furious, I think, did make a lot of money. Because Fast X, Fast 9, Fast 8, I don't know about Fast 7, we're going to figure that out, are really funny movies. They really are. But anyways, The next movie of the franchise is Furious 6, which is really weird because this would have been the perfect ending to the franchise. They managed to make the biggest heist in history and get to live off their life, or get to live the rest of their lives rich and happy. Which makes sense for the end of the movie, but whatever, I guess. I mean, they did end it on a, note that would obviously mean another sequel, but whatever, right? But like I said, Fast and the Furious 6, which is the introduction of which I would assume Owen Shaw, which is the first big bad that's not a mafia or another member of the family like Dom, right? But anyways, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.